CS needs to be tied to revenue outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
whether they are directly owning the upsell, renewal, the negotiations, all of it or not. They've got to get really clear about what they're driving and the revenue outcomes they're driving. There's been a lot of conversation like, is CS going to be displaced by account management? I've heard this a lot lately. Like, aren't we just turning CS into account managers? And I would argue and say account management could be potentially displaced by CS. These CS orgs tying themselves to standing up renewals at minimum, upsells optional, but renewals at minimum, you now own likely a larger number every year than sales. Like, just get out there and learn and figure out how to do it. Look, change is scary for all of us, but this is the direction that the industry and tech is going right now. Whether we want it or not, this is the direction it's going. And it's kind of like AI. We either get with it or we get displaced. So we got to get with it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of ScaleTail podcast. And I'm really excited about this one because today we have with us someone who is one of the top names in customer success, someone who I have been following since many years and have managed to get her on the podcast. Maranda Dziekonski. Maranda is Senior Vice President of Customer Success and Ops at Datasembly. She has over 20 years of experience both working in and building world-class operations, startups, and so far, Miranda has been honored with many awards. I will just mention a few. She is one of the top 50 CCS to watch. She is top 25 customer success influencer for 2021, 2022, 2023, and many other awards and leadership awards. Apart from that, she is one of the prolific writers on LinkedIn. And if you don't follow her, I recommend you do. There's so much wisdom in every post that she shares. I can go on and on about her, but it's time to let us speak. Thanks for being with us, Miranda. I've
Thank
always
you.
wanted to host you. How are you doing now?
I'm doing good. It's early in the morning where I'm at, but yeah, I'm doing really good, and I'm so honored that I'm getting to have this conversation with you. Thank you for inviting me. I love talking about customer success and tech startups and operations and leadership. So, and I just love talking. So anytime somebody invites me to join, I'm always happy to do so.
And your posts are also so inspirational, Miranda. With the entire, I remember we had a first conversation, and you just had your surgery, and you were still in the call discussing, and there was so much energy in that discussion, and you do share all of that. So I strongly recommend all my listeners do follow her. There's so much inspiration there, and I got so excited talking to you the first time.
Thank you. That means a lot. Yeah, when we spoke to prep for this, I was not too far out from having a spine surgery,
Yes.
which I'm doing very well. It has really changed my life. I'm back out hiking again and in nature, and it's just, my gosh, it's like night and day difference. So while I have a
This
lovely scar that I'll have with me forever, like I don't even care. It's that great.
there's just so much positive energy around you. It's just makes you excited about talking to you in general. Thank you. So let's dive into one of the, well, shall I say, most controversial topics nowadays, where people keep discussing about shall we not, should I not. So the question is revenue centric CS culture, and how does it drive business value? Right.
Yeah.
There is so much discussion and debate and things that have been happening over a period of time. So before we move ahead, I would like to know, are you for it or against it?
Well, I'm on my ninth startup now, and I've seen varying business models. And my answer is, if it makes sense for the business, I'm for it. If it would hurt the business or the customer experience, I'm against it. I know that's a very nuanced question. I will take it even a step further and say, um, CS, and I've been saying this for a long time, CS needs to be tied to revenue outcomes, whether they are directly owning the upsell, renewal, the negotiations, all of it or not. They've got to get really clear about what they're driving and the revenue outcomes they're driving. We are no longer in an environment where CS can just be tied to NPS.
Correct.
There's heavy scrutinizing of budgets, where we're spending, who's driving value, who's not driving value, and not just value, but who's driving revenue and who's not driving revenue. And those that are not tied to revenue are the ones that are going to be at risk of
Yeah.
being laid off, at risk of being displaced. So it's just smart in this moment, as long as it makes sense in your business model, to figure out a way to get yourself there.
Yes, absolutely. That's like, of course, you have a huge experience with different kinds of businesses where you have dealt with and you've handled, and I'm sure you've set up entire teams where aligning them towards revenue and the mindset and thought process has changed. What I would like to understand is what are the areas do you think where customer success, in certain cases, of course, it is a nuanced question, where customer success needs to own fully or partially, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit, like is it renewal, is it upsell, is it cross sell, or do you generate lead and pass it on? Are you in a better position to negotiate, and in sort of which circumstances, if you can elaborate a little?
Yeah. So let's think about the typical customer journey, right? Let's think about the typical customer journey. So customer signs on, the deal's closed. They typically go into an onboarding and implementation phase, whether that's owned by CS or not. That depends again at the company. Then they go into like a repeat value realization phase, and that should be heavily driven by CS. Um, and whether or not that begets itself to the natural gateway of identifying and ushering expansions across the finish line, ushering renewals across the finish line. That's going to depend. And I know people don't like that it depends kind of answers, but it's going to depend on the actual model. Now, if you're talking about a very complex sale that is going to require RFPs or, very intense negotiations, I do suggest pairing a CSM with a renewals manager of some sort. Not because they're not capable, but there is a little bit of having that be the guardian of the relationship type of thing that I think can play out. If it is not very like intense negotiations or an RFP, there's absolutely no reason why the CSM should not be able to usher those renewals across the finish line, because it's just another day in the life of that relationship. Customers know they pay you money for your service. It is not a surprise to customers. They know that you're not a charity. They know that they've purchased you to solve a certain problem. As long as you're partnering with them and solving that problem, driving that value, the renewal should be just another moment in time and shouldn't be this big scary event. Uh, Upsells, cross sells, expansion. If the upsell is just a paper event, like, hey, I want to add more seats, like CS perfectly capable of handling that. Every CS person should be perfectly capable of doing the paperwork for that. Should they do it? I don't know. Again, it depends on the company, but they should be capable. But in regards to the more complex upsells, I go back to the same thing with renewals. If we're talking heavy negotiations, RFPs, writing up intense statement of works, I do like the CS team to have a sales partner, because sales folks think about things a little bit differently. They position things a little bit different.
Yes.
But again, if it's not something that is a heavy negotiation or an RFP type of situation, CS, I think as well, should be able to handle that upsell. And if you are somebody who's not comfortable doing that, I think it's important that you get comfortable doing it because that's kind of the direction things are going.
Yes.
There's been a lot of conversation like, is CS going to be displaced by account management? I've heard this a lot lately. Like, aren't we just turning CS into account managers? And I would argue and say account management could be potentially displaced by CS. If CS,
Isn't that how it's going anyway? Account management is a position has been there since forever.
I
CS
know
is something that started mainly because of the advent of SaaS and then it has evolved over the years. Account
exactly.
management was always there. It's
Always,
not something new. And
it's
in
not.
certain cases, in certain types of businesses, account managers still continue to exist along with CS.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It happens all over the place. At many of the companies I've been at, there's been an account team, which is usually like a CS, an account manager, and maybe a sales or a solutions engineer all paired together. What has changed now, though, is the dollar is more expensive. So the growth at all cost, the VCs and PE firms putting more money into companies that have no path to profitability or no path to an exit, like that has just that's
Changed
come-
everything.
it's
Yes.
changed. So having this notion that you can afford to have an account team to usher through a certain amount of dollars is starting to go away, and the account team is becoming more lean and more efficient. So I do think there could be a merging of the roles in a lot of
I, I,
organizations.
I, I agree with you, Miranda, and I see that at least in my business that I am running, I feel that is the way to go. Like my customer success team, they are most, they are most comfortable and very, very in strong relations with the customer, and they are in a very good position to have those kind of conversations with the customer, understanding their needs and actually bringing value instead of just pushing stuff, right? And
Yes.
that gives them a lot of confidence. So it looks like it's moving there, and with SaaS being the way it is, and I hear a lot. Sorry, I'm a little digressing from our topic, but
No.
I hear a lot that nowadays when people start doing these, reduction in teams, a lot of customer success people are losing jobs. And I still don't get it
I
because
know.
your large chunk of revenue is coming from your existing customers. And
Yes.
customer success is the team which is making sure renewals don't just happen. They happen because things have been done over a year.
Correct. Here's the thing, though, and I'm not saying this is true. I don't want to get a bunch of hate mail from this. I'm not saying this is true for all companies, but I do know some of the customer success teams that are being displaced aren't tied close enough to revenue. They're just not tied close enough to revenue. And look, at my previous organization, I owned finance. I was one of those people that sat and looked at all the expenses and went line by line by line by line. Where are we spending money on tech? What can we cut? Where are we spending money on headcount? Who's driving revenue? Who can we not lose? Who can we afford to lose? What are the ratios? What are the benchmarks for each of the teams? Who's over benchmark? Like, I was one of those individuals who did that. And I know the lens that folks are looking through. And if you're not figuring out how to tie yourself to revenue,
Correct.
or you're owning an upsell, or you have a number that you need to stand up. I don't think this is going to be like this forever, but for the foreseeable future, you could be at risk.
Correct, correct. I think it's actually a disservice that customer success is doing to itself if you're
Yeah,
not aligning with revenue in one way or the other.
I agree.
Okay. Third question that I had was, in this journey of, let's say, renewals and owning upsells or expansion, of course, it depends on the kind of business process you have and the kind of systems you have. But what are the stages in this journey that you think that CSM should be able to get access to? Like, is it lead gen, which I do believe is possible going beyond that negotiation, assuming the easier, yes, we get it. That you already elaborated that the customer success team should be able to do if it's not complex. if it is so in two scenarios, let's say one, it is complex process and it's a little less complex. I mean, it's never simple in CS,
Yeah.
but let's say it's a little less complex. What are the stages that a CS you think should be able to, if not now, they can learn and get to do these things? If it lead gen, negotiation, what are the stages?
I think um I think lead gen definitely.
Hmm.
So I'll share my screen really quickly. Um, I talk a lot about a value cycle, and I'll give this a quick share.
Yes, that would be
So
great.
this is a value cycle, and I'm sure many folks have seen this on my LinkedIn, those that follow me. This is why I'm a big believer that CS should be part of lead gen somehow. So when you're partnering with your customer, one of the biggest things you should be doing is understanding their goals and pain points. You surface these goals and pain points, and you partner with them to figure out, if you were to solve this, how much money would this save? How much efficiencies would this drive? Try as hard as possible to make it measurable. I know it's hard sometimes. Sometimes it's more soft ROI than hard ROI, but first and foremost, you understand goals and pain points and you build a plan. And I want to be clear, this is a B2B enterprise motion. You build the plan, you partner with them to deliver that value out of that plan, report on the value, that's your executive business review, and then you do it all over again. You understand your goals and pain points. If you're using this value cycle in the relationship, what ends up happening is you start building one, trust, and showing the customer that you are a valuable partner, not just a vendor. But two, you start understanding or surfacing goals and pain points that you don't cover with their current investment, which then results in you figuring out different ways that you can expand that partnership and deepen in their organization the impact that you can make. I think if CS switches their lens, your job is not to sell, right? Your job is to really deepen the partnership through their current investment, but also have the hat on trying to figure out, like, could we save them X amount of more dollars if they invested in this module or in this area of the product? And once you build that trust and you show them that you have their best interest at heart and their best interest in mind, it's easier to look at the problems they're solving for in their organization. And it just organically, I shouldn't even say organically, like it's deliberate, but it creates that pipeline.
And
So yeah,
the value cycle, the way it's presented, of course, we all know this, but the way you've put it together, it sort of seems very simple,
yes,
right? When you think about it. And we have discussed CSM's job is to do these things, but the way you put it together, it's a very streamlined process. Talk to the customer, find out goals and pains, plan for it, solve it, report it, go back.
go back, do it again. Yep. And it
Yes,
starts at the sale, right? So
yes.
your AE, when they're selling, they're using like probably a medic process or something like that. Their goal too is to understand what are the pain points that this solution is going to solve for. So your customer should enter into the customer life cycle with those pain points already identified. And actually, it even starts, and I'll share my screen one more time. It even starts as early as marketing.
Yes.
So marketing, they understand what the pain points are that your solution solves for typically, and they're doing campaigns to, get folks interested or let people know you're out there and you can solve these problems. Then it comes into the sales cycle and they leverage that, and then implementations where the implementations teams are leveraging those goals and really getting that, tied to their first value. Then it goes into customer success, and it's like a wash, rinse, repeat. But this is part of the value cycle as well, because marketing leverages then outcomes and value cycles or value stories for case studies, prospecting, targeting, doing account-based marketing. Like it all flows together.
And also, the customer comes to you by reading your website and the content that the marketing is putting out there. So they are also coming with the same expectation or identifying something as their own pain point when they read the marketing content. So what
Exactly.
you're saying seems so logical. Like it's just different when you look at it on a screen. Like put that together, but it's absolutely logical when you think about it. Yes, customer when it tries to reach to you, they are reading things and they think something on your marketing content is going to solve their pain, and that's the
Yeah,
reason they reach out to the sales. And then of course they try to communicate the same pain and see if the say whatever sales is showing is actually going to solve my problem. So I do feel whatever they've said is going to probably solve my problem, and then you start the implementation and customer success. So the top problem that they may have, that they have already seen through marketing and sales. And
exactly.
probably some of it has been solved by first value, but then the customer success comes in and your top problem may be solved, but there would be 20 others in the tail which they haven't yet expressed. And therefore, the rinse and repeat is so essential to be able to
Exactly.
keep them interested.
Exactly. And look, I'll be the first to say this is definitely more of like an enterprise play, but this works too with some of the, more transactional type products. So you would do the same thing. Maybe you like, I worked at HelloSign for 3 years. We were electronic signatures. There's only so many problems you can solve with electronic signatures, right? You're doing business and transactions. However, that's the kind of product where instead of trying to keep unsurface more problems with your current buyer, you try to figure out, are there other departments that have the same problem, right? So it's the same idea. It's just now, instead of saying, hey, Bob, so we've now saved you 10 minutes on every transaction and you do, 100 of these a week. Let's do the math. That's how many minutes you've saved. Like, what can we do for you again? And Bob's like, well, we're already killing it. Like, there's nothing more I can do, right? And that's where the value cycle would probably fail unless you flip that script and start thinking, okay, I've solved Bob's, but how do I talk to Sue now in HR or John in marketing, right? Like you have to use the same thing, but now you go wider in the
Yes.
organization. So it's the same idea. Um, and it will be probably very similar problem statements, but the same motion.
It's like trying to figure the pain not of just the person, but the entire business. Right.
Correct.
So if you look at the business pains, then maybe you need to reach out to the another person within the organization and another person of what you have and what it can solve within the business, instead of
Exactly.
just thinking about pain of that person or individual you're talking about in one department. Instead,
Exactly.
where else that your product or what other use cases that it can solve. And a product like HelloSign can be used by finance, can be necessary for HR and various other departments, of course, maybe at times with CS or implementation or sales when you need documents signed. It, there are so many use cases within the organization and every team head decides on their own. So
Exactly.
I think that's instead of, just thinking of pain point of that particular person, the entire business pain point, if you go broader, as you said, then
Yes,
it makes so much sense.
it does. The one call out I will say is you have to earn the right to be able to go wider in an organization. If you're
Of
not earning
course.
the right with the initial purchaser, um, it will fail. It'll fail right there on the spot. So if your initial purchaser, your initial sponsor into the organization isn't achieving value or don't view you
Mm,
as a strong partner, like going wider in organization's not going to help you.
won't work.
Probably
Of
hurt you
course.
because
Of course. Of
you
course.
know like word of mouth matters, and when you're trying to go wider in the same organization, that word of mouth is going to be strong.
They are testing you, right? So if you have gotten the first project and a small part of it and you haven't proven yourself, you obviously cannot go in anywhere within the organization. There is no way.
Exactly. Exactly.
Earn the right. That's a good term. Earn the right to ask
Yes.
for more first.
earn the right before and I don't care what kind of motion it is, if it's B2B enterprise, if it's B2C, if it's B2B2C, like if it's whatever. Um, you have to earn the right by proving value to get those new use cases to start the value cycle again.
So within the value cycle, going back to my original question, so yes, within the value cycle, I think generating lead will become sort of like the word I'm thinking is organic, but you said that's not right. It is deliberate, but it comes if you do this process properly, it will come anyway,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Um, I've done it at other organizations and have seen it net great results. Now, it's not an overnight fix, right? This is a long play. So
Yes.
if folks are looking for a quick fix, like this is not a quick fix. This is a long play. This is a strategic move. This is chess, not checkers. So, um, like that's the way that folks need to look at it. But you will net stronger relationships because you're earning that right.
So in scenarios where the businesses are a little complex, CS can be aligned with generating leads. They may not go through the process of detailed RFPs and negotiation. However, where typically in B2B enterprises, there are different scales, right? There is something like a Hello Sign, which is kind of online, quick sale process. And then, of course, there are larger businesses within that structure also. So, in cases where there are no detailed RFPs and detailed negotiation processes, in those cases, shouldn't customer success also go ahead doing the upsell and negotiation and probably learn those skills over a period of time? Or is
I
it
mean,
better
it
to sort
doesn't
of take a
hurt.
little?
It doesn't hurt. Here's my only caveat. I have seen an RFP take up, I'm not kidding, like weeks of people's time, weeks. Where they're writing responses, they're gathering requirements, they're putting together proposals and statements of work. And I selfishly don't want my CSMs ripped off from their entire account base to focus on getting one sale across the finish line. Um, it it could put an organization at risk of, not serving the other customer base while you're laser focused on getting this one across the finish line. That is one of the only reasons why I say having a renewals manager or a sales partner or even an RFP leader, someone to partner with. So the CSMs, maybe they can be the front face, but they need some type of partnership or else this can consume their entire world. And others will suffer because of it.
Of course, of course. How do you suggest for CSMs when they try to move? This is something new. A lot of CSMs have not done it,
Yeah.
right? And if they are trying to assume this as a responsibility towards negotiation of money, how do they learn those skills which they haven't done ever, and they are kind of scared? A lot of people that I talk to, they're kind of scared that, will I be able to do it, and will I be able to negotiate, right? And they will doubt yourself.
Yeah.
It's natural, right? You would always
Yeah.
doubt that, did I negotiate it low, could I have gone higher? It's always that thought. So how can they learn that skill is what I'm asking.
Partner with your AE team. Find the best AE in your company and ask them if you can shadow some of their negotiations and then role play with them afterwards if you can get them to give you that time. And most are very generous with their time like that. um, at least most that I've encountered are. But I would say shadow an account executive, shadow someone in sales, surround yourself with folks in that environment, listen how they talk about their deals and how they think about the levers and how they think about optionality. I wrote a post on LinkedIn a couple of days, telling folks like we're in a very interesting time where every customer is seeking a discount and every vendor is seeking a price increase.
Yes, I just read
This is
it.
this is like one of the, I would say, it's like the first time in years that this has been the dynamic where every customer is like, I can't take a price increase. As a matter of fact, I need you to reduce my price by 10%, right? Um, here are things that, folks can do when you're thinking about optionality. If you're seeking a price increase, you can only do it if you're providing value and you can prove out that
Right.
value. Whether it's hard or soft ROI, like make sure you have a very strong ROI story. Work with your salesperson to like really lay it out. So a lot of salespeople, they know, like, I'm going to show a 1 year deal at a 10% increase. I'm going to then show a 2 year deal at a 7%, a 3 year deal at a 5%, or, at a 5%. And it shows the customer like, okay, I actually will take less of an increase if I have a longer contract. And they're going to add in improved SLAs. They're going to add in, like, make the customer really see that you're giving them something for that price increase. Now, on the other hand, if you're not able to get there and you're worried about losing your contract, really think through what can you bring, or what can you get in order to give. And I wrote out things like case studies, their logo on your website, speaking at conferences, references. Like, marketing has a budget. Marketing spends money on these things. It's probably going to be cheaper to give that 5% discount than to have marketing spend it out of their budget. Like, it's like,
Correct.
so I mean, there's ways around this, but really shadow your AEs and figure out how they navigate these things. And then you just have to rip the Band-Aid off. Maybe do a partner call, like have an AE shadow you on your first, renewals call. I guarantee you, in most organizations, the AEs will be okay giving up the renewals because it is a lot of work for them. And it'll be a great entry point. So start with maybe some of the lower risk accounts where the conversation's easier, and then get a partner for some of the higher risk accounts where there's going to be a lot of negotiations. There's no better way to get the experience than just to rip off the Band-Aid and do it.
Perfect, Miranda. I don't think I want to say anything. That's such a perfect way you put it together in terms of what you should do. So don't procrastinate, ladies and gentlemen. Rip the band-aid off.
Rip it off.
Just one last question, Miranda. Since you have done this in multiple organizations, what do you see within the organization that changes in terms of CS perception, the way CS is viewed, and how CS handles when the revenue numbers are one way or the other aligned with customer success?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a lot, and true or untrue, there's always a lot of banter tied to a sales org and their ability to influence product roadmap, their ability to, get budget. In almost every org I've ever been in, there's always this banter. Again, true or untrue. Um, there is a little bit of truth to it that if you are a team that's driving revenue and you say, I need $1,000 for this, and I'm going to be able to print 10x the money, you're probably going to get it, right? The CS orgs tying themselves to standing up renewals at minimum, upsells optional, but renewals at minimum, you now own likely a larger number every year than sales.
Absolutely, always.
Right. Because usually new sales is bringing in a much lower number than the revenue that needs to be renewed in that year. That within itself, I hate to use the word power, but there's a lot of power that can be tied to that, because now you need to stand up, $20 million this year, and sales is bringing in, 4 million, right? Or 5 million. So I would tell people, like, to flip the script in your mind and think about it through that lens, especially leaders out there that are incredibly trepidatious of tying their name to a renewal because they're worried that if it doesn't renew, their job will be at risk. Well, that's true if you own the renewal or if you don't own the renewal. So why not have greater control over your destination and the destination of your team? Why not take those reins and have the influence that comes along with it? Because now you'll know what you need to stand those renewals up because you're the closest to that customer and you will be able to advocate with the business to get what you need to stand up the biggest number in the company.
Correct, correct. And this gives you so much control over your destiny, the way you want to, design your own CSO basically, and how you create the plans for the future. Otherwise, you're always limited, is what I have felt.
Exactly.
You're very
I agree,
limited
I agree with you. I agree with you
in
completely.
terms of, so like basic requirements that as a CSO you might have, because you don't get that budget that you deserve, and you need that budget to be able to do certain things, but you would
Yes, you do.
not be able to put, let's say, the requisite amount of return behind
Yes,
it.
I agree. I agree. We're 100% on the same page. So,
Perfect, Miranda. Thank you. Thank you very much. And last few words, of course, we'll always remember Rip the Band-Aid, but last few words for customer success teams who are trying to, grapple with this and move into the revenue space.
I just just get out there and learn and figure out how to do it. Look, change is scary for all of us, but this is the direction that the industry and tech is going right now. Whether we want it or not, this is the direction it's going. And it's kind of like AI. We either get with it or we get displaced. So we got to get with it and
Yes,
understand how to leverage the tools that are available to us.
absolutely. Perfect, Miranda. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. It was absolutely wonderful. Thank you for being with us today. I can't believe you already at the end of the podcast. I had to really look at my timer because I knew we could have talked for hours.
We could have, right? And it just felt like a conversation. So this was great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Miranda. I had so much fun and a lot of information. And to all my listeners, thank you for joining us today. And I would strongly recommend, please do follow Miranda on LinkedIn. There is so much knowledge and wisdom, and of course, life inspirations that she shares openly with everyone. I am a regular reader of her posts, of course. And if you like the podcast, please feel free to follow and subscribe us. We are available on major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And see you in the next episode soon.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot, Miranda.